Methods for finding equations of lines. So we've looked at a couple of these already in the unit. So we're just going to recap method one, and then we're going to look at finding the equations of lines when we're not given the clear indications of our slope and our y-intercept. So we're going to write our equations of our lines in slope y-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And in order to write the equation in y equals mx plus b, you need to know two things. You need to know the slope, which is m, and you need to know the y-intercept, which is b. So if it's already given to you in the method one, then it's really easy to substitute those values into the equation. So given the slope and the y-intercept, so substitute the slope and y-intercept variables into the equation y equals mx plus b. So for example, number one, it tells you already that the slope is -2 and the y-intercept is 5. So all I'm going to do is substitute in -2 for my m, so -2x, and I'm going to substitute in my 5 for my b, so +5. And so if it clearly tells you what the slope and y-intercept are, it's very easy to substitute that into the equation of the straight line. And it's okay, remember, if your slopes are fractions, because it's actually easier for us to graph when we know that our slope is in a fraction, so we can clearly see the rise over the run. So for example, number 2, we're substituting in 4/7 for your m, so 4/7, and then x, and then -3 for your b. And so very quick and easy, that's what we have for our equations of the lines when we are given the slope and the y-intercept. So method 2 we've also looked at already in this unit, so let's do a quick recap of that. So if you're given a graph of a straight line, we can easily find the y-intercept and then use another coordinate point on that line to help us calculate the slope using the rise over run, and then we can substitute that into the equation of the line. So let's start by finding our y-intercept. The y-intercept we have at +2, so your b is 2. And now we're going to find our slope, so the rise over the run. So I'm going to use this x-intercept right here because it's nice and easy for us to use those 2 points. So I'm going to calculate my rise and my run using my right triangle. My apologies for this. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so I'm going to Okay, so my rise is the vertical distance between those 2 points, which is 2, and my run is the horizontal distance between those 2 points, which is also 2. So I have a rise over run of 2/2, which simplifies to 1. So that's helpful for us to know. So it's always really good to simplify your fraction. So put your fraction into lowest terms when you're substituting it into the equation of the line. So now I have my y-intercept of 2. So I can substitute in y equals 1x plus 2. Now you can keep the 1 for your slope if that's helpful for you, or you could write it as y equals x plus 2. Both of these I would accept for this unit. So example method 3 and 4 are going to be new methods for you to learn. So we're going to find the equation of a straight line when we are given a slope and one point that lies on that line, and that point might be the y-intercept, but more than likely it's going to be another point on that line. And then we're going to look at method 4 when we're given 2 points on that line. So method 3, we're going to first calculate the y-intercept using the slope and the point that's given. And we're going to do that by substituting all the values that we know into the equation y equals mx plus b, and then solve to get the b. And then once we found that value for b, we're going to rewrite the equation using the values for m and b only, okay? So we're going to start by identifying what each of these values mean in terms of our equation. So your slope, we know, is represented by the letter m. So a coordinate is represented with an x and y. So that's going to be very helpful for you to identify, so that when we substitute it into this version of the equation, we're going to substitute our 2 in for our y, our 4 in for our m, and our 3 in for our x, and then we're going to be left with only one variable, which are b, to solve. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to substitute in 2, and then 2 equals 4, because that's our m, times 3, which is our x coordinate, and then plus b. So once you've identified your variables, then you can solve for the letter b. So we only have one variable left. So 2 is equal to 4 times 3, which is 12, plus b. So now we want to subtract 12 from both sides to eliminate the constant from the right-hand side. So 2 take away 12 is equal to 12 take away 12 plus b. So we have 2 minus 12 is negative 10 equals, well, 12 minus 12 is 0, which is what we wanted. So we're left with b is equal to negative 12. If you want to rewrite this so that it looks like this, you're more than welcome to do that if it's helpful for you to put your variable first, but the line above that is fine as well. So now that we have our y-intercept of negative 10, now we can substitute it into our equation using only the values for m and b. So y is equal to 4x, and then our b is negative 10. So you have to do this preliminary calculation first before you can substitute it into the equation y equals mx plus b. So I hope that helps you. Feel free to rewatch this video as you're going through your practice questions to look at those steps again. And then method 4 is a little bit trickier still, but you have all of the skills necessary to do this question because we've looked at finding the slope using 2 points, and we know how to do method 3 now, where we can find the y-intercept by plugging in the values that we know. But before we do method 4, let's do another example for method 5 or method 3, for example 5. So we have a slope of 1/2, negative 1/2, so that's our m, and it passes through the point 1, 4, so the coordinate is x, y. So we're going to use our equation of the line, mx plus b, and we're going to substitute in what we know. So 4 is your y, negative 1/2 is your m, 1 is your x, and then plus b. So what you want to do is you want to simplify your numbers that you're adding together. So you have 4 is equal to negative 1/2, because negative 1/2 times 1 is still negative 1/2, and then plus b. So now what you want to do is you want to add, because this is a negative number, we want to add 1/2 to both sides. So we have 4 plus 1/2 is equal to negative 1/2 plus 1/2 plus b. So we're left with 4.5 on the left-hand side. Negative 1/2 plus 1/2 is 0, which is what we want, and that's equal to b. Now, I would suggest that you write your mixed fractions as improper fractions, or you could write them as a decimal number, whatever is easier for you to think about if you were to actually sketch this line, okay? If your slope is given to you as a fraction, I would encourage you to write your y-intercept as a fraction as well. And like I said, sometimes it's easier to write this as a improper fraction. I know that there are some teachers who really frown upon you keeping your slope as a fraction and then your y-intercept as a decimal number. They like things to be consistent. If it's easier for you to think about that during these times, then feel free to do that. Okay, so I may write this as 5 over 2, or actually 9 over 2. So 2 times 4 is 8, and then 8 plus 1 is 9. So 9 over 2 is the same as 4.5. So you could write it like that, or you could do 4.5 is equal to b. So either of these versions of your b would be okay for this equation. So now I want to put it into my equation, y equals mx plus b, using just the value for m and just the value for b. So I'm just using my value for m and just using my value for b. So it becomes y equals -1/2 x, and then you choose which one of these you want to use. So this was an or an or, and I'm going to choose my 9 over 2 to make life fun. Okay, so either one of these versions of b you could substitute in for your b here, and I would accept that. Okay, so but unless your question states otherwise. So if your question says to keep it as a fraction, an improper fraction, you keep that as an improper fraction. If your question says convert that into a decimal number, keep it as a decimal number. So make sure you read your questions carefully as well. All right, so method number 5, again, a little bit more trickier. Method number 4, sorry. We're going to get to 5, don't you worry. Do I tell you? Yes, okay. So method number 4, graphing 2 points on a line. So this one you should be okay with. We can plot the points on a line with no problem. So the first thing we want to do is plot the 2 coordinates onto the graph. So this should be the word on. My apologies for that. Then we're going to draw a line between 2 points and across the y-axis if it doesn't already cross, because we want to find the y-intercept. And then we're going to calculate the slope between the 2 points using rise over run, which we know how to do. So here we go. So we're going to plot the points 3, 1. So I'm going to go across to 3 and up to 1. And then I'm going to plot the point 6, 3. So I'm going to go across to 6 and up to 3. So I'm going to connect these 2 points, but I'm also going to extend it so that it crosses through that y-axis as well. And it would probably cross right here. Then I'm going to redraw that line because I think it's important for you to be able to see where it crosses. So it ends up actually crossing at the -1. So I'm going to try to redraw that again. Like I said, if you're using a ruler, it's going to be a lot easier for you to draw that more correctly. Okay, so now I can identify that, hey, I have this y-intercept of -1. So that's really helpful for us to determine. And then we can draw our right triangle. To find our rise over a run. So the rise, between the vertical distance between these 2 points is 2, and the run, the horizontal distance between these 2 points is 3. So my y-intercept is -1, and my slope is 2 over 3. So now that I've identified that, I can plug it into the equation y equals mx plus b, where I substitute in the values for m and b. So y is equal to 2 over 3x minus 1. All right, last method. This is the little trickier one, like I was saying, but we can do this. So we're going to find the equation of the line using mx plus b when we're giving 2 points on a line, but we're not given the graph, or maybe we don't have graph paper, so we can't easily sketch it. So the first thing we want to do is calculate the slope using our formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So remember, when we are given 2 points, we want to label one as x1, y1, and the other as x2, y2. And like I said, if you label this one x2, y2 and that one x1, y1, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same value for your slope. So that's the first thing we want to do. So we want to calculate the slope. So m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're going to substitute in our values. Y2 is 3 minus, and then y1 is 5. And then x2 is negative 1. And we're subtracting x1, which is negative 3. It's really important to keep both of those negative signs there. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to simplify our numerator and our denominator. So 3 take away 5 is negative 2. Then we have negative 1. Remember that when we have two negative signs directly beside each other, it becomes a positive. So this becomes a positive 3. So you can, again, continue this up on the next sort of column. So I have negative 2 over, and negative 1 plus 2 is positive 2. And now I'm going to simplify this fraction, so write this into lowest terms. So negative 2 over 2, or negative 2 divided by 2, gives us negative 1. So now that you've identified your slope, now we can pick one of these lines, one of these points, and put it into the equation of the line. So that was step 1. Okay, so now we're going to choose one of these coordinates, it doesn't matter which one, and we're going to calculate the y-intercept. So let's choose this point right here. Okay, so I have my equation, y equals mx plus b. My y is going to be 5. My slope is negative 1. My x is negative 3. And I'm solving for b. So this is part 2 of this question. So 5 equals negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. So 3 plus b. We want to subtract 3 from both sides to get rid of the constant on the right-hand side. So 5 take away 3 is equal to 3 take away 3 plus b. 5 take away 3 is 2. 3 take away 3 is 0, so we're left with b is equal to 2. Okay, so then that's part 2, and then we want to rewrite the equation using just the m and the b. So y equals mx plus b. So we're just substituting the value for m and the value for b. So y is equal to negative 1x plus 2. So you can keep that negative 1 from your slope, or you could write it as y equals negative x plus 2 and eliminate that 1. So those are 5 methods to find the equation of a line in slope y-intercept form. Depending on what information you're given in your question will determine which one of these methods you're going to use. This would be a good handout to keep handy for you as you're continuing throughout this course. The next unit looks at solving for points of intersection between two straight lines, and you can also refer to this when you are doing your test as well.